There are days when you wake up and nothing is physically wrong, but something feels heavy, not pain, not illness, just a weight you can't explain. Your body moves, but your energy doesn't follow. Your mind tries to focus, but it feels slow, foggy, distant. And the strangest part is this: even after rest, even after doing nothing intense, you still feel drained. I'm going to tell you something most people never hear clearly. This feeling is not always about what you did, it's often about what you carried. I didn't always understand this from where I stand now. There was a time I was deeply involved in the occult, trained to observe patterns, behavior, and how certain states of mind could be influenced without people even realizing it. And one thing was always clear: people don't feel heavy for no reason. There is always a pattern behind it. I remember this clearly. This was one of the most common states we saw. Not extreme, not dramatic, but consistent. A quiet heaviness that followed people through their day. They would try to push through it, ignore it, blame it on sleep, stress, or routine. But it kept returning. Now listen carefully. This is not about fear. This is about awareness. Because most people look at this the wrong way. They think the problem is physical. They think they need more rest, more motivation, more energy. But they ignore the real cause: accumulation. Things that were never released, thoughts that were never closed, moments that were never ended. Now imagine this. Every day you go through experiences, stress, distractions, unfinished thoughts, and instead of ending them, you carry them forward into the next day and the next and the next. That build-up doesn't disappear, it stays with you quietly until one day you wake up feeling heavy without knowing why. Now listen carefully. That feeling is not random, it's a signal, a sign that something has been continuing for too long without interruption. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you the first hidden pattern behind this heaviness. Something subtle, but once you see it, you'll understand why your energy feels drained, even when you haven't done much at all. Now, this is the first thing you need to understand, because this is where the heaviness actually begins, not in your body, but in your mind. I remember this clearly. People thought they were tired, but what they were really experiencing was continuation. Now listen carefully. At the end of your day, something is supposed to happen, a natural closing, a moment where everything that happened stops. But for most people, that moment never comes. You finish your day, but your mind doesn't. You lie down, but your thoughts keep moving. You try to rest, but something keeps running in the background. That's the pattern. Now, here's the truth you need to understand. If your mind never fully closes, it never fully resets. And if it never resets, it keeps carrying everything forward. I saw this again and again. People would say, I slept, but I still feel tired. I rested, but I still feel heavy. And the reason was simple. Their body stopped, but their mind didn't. Now, listen carefully. Your mind doesn't automatically shut off. It needs a clear signal, a boundary, something that tells it, this is finished. But if that signal is missing, your thoughts continue. The same things, repeating again and again. Unfinished conversations, unresolved situations, things you keep thinking about without realizing it. Now imagine this. Every night, your mind carries these thoughts forward. They don't disappear, they stay active. And over time, they build up layer by layer until that buildup becomes weight. And that weight is what you feel as heaviness. Now, here's something very important. This doesn't feel like thinking. It feels like pressure. It feels like low energy because your system is overloaded, not physically, but mentally. Now listen carefully. If your mind never fully closes at night, you are not starting your day fresh. You are continuing from where you left off. And when that repeats daily, the heaviness grows. Now imagine this. Instead of ending your day, you extend it into the next one and then into the next. That's not separate days anymore. That's one continuous load. Now listen carefully. This is the first hidden pattern behind why you feel drained. Not because you lack energy, but because you never release what you already carry. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you the second pattern. Why even small things during the day start feeling overwhelming, and how that connects directly to what your mind is already holding. Now, this is where the effect becomes visible in your daily life, not in a big, obvious way, but in small moments that start to feel bigger than they should. I remember this clearly. This was the stage where people began to notice something was wrong, but they couldn't explain it because nothing dramatic was happening. Just simple things. Feeling harder. Now listen carefully. You wake up, you start your day, and something that should feel easy feels like effort. A small task feels like pressure. A simple decision feels like too much thinking. A normal responsibility feels heavier than usual. Not impossible, but harder than it should be. Now, here's the truth you need to understand. This is not about the task, it's about your capacity. Because when your mind is already carrying unresolved weight, even small things add to that load. I saw this again and again. People would say, I don't know why I feel overwhelmed. I don't know why everything feels like too much. But when you looked closely, it wasn't everything. It was accumulation. Now listen carefully. Your mind has a limit, not a fixed number, but a threshold, a point where adding more starts to feel like pressure. And if you never release what you carry, you reach that threshold faster. Now imagine this. You start your day already holding yesterday's thoughts, already holding unfinished things, already holding mental noise. Then a new task appears on its own. It's small, but added to everything else, it feels heavy. That's the pattern. Now, here's something very important. This is why you feel overwhelmed by things that didn't bother you before, because your baseline has changed. You're not starting from zero, you're starting from accumulation. Now, listen carefully. When your baseline is heavy, everything feels heavier, even things that are simple, even things you used to handle easily. That's why you feel drained, without doing anything extreme. Now imagine this. Every day your mental load increases slightly. Not enough to notice immediately, but enough to build over time, until one day everything feels like effort. That's not random, that's a pattern. Now listen carefully. If small things are starting to feel heavy, don't ignore it. That is a sign that your mind is carrying more than it should. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you the third pattern. Why, even when you rest, you don't feel refreshed, and why that keeps repeating no matter how much you try to recover. Now, this is where the frustration really sets in. Because at this stage, you do try to fix it. You take breaks, you lie down, you try to sleep earlier. And for a moment, it feels like it should help. But then you wake up and the heaviness is still there. I remember this clearly. This was the point where people started questioning everything because they were doing what they were supposed to do, resting. But nothing changed. Now listen carefully. Rest only works when your system actually resets. And reset only happens when something ends. But if nothing ends, rest becomes incomplete. Now here's the truth you need to understand. Your body can rest while your mind continues. And when your mind continues, your system never fully recovers. I saw this again and again. People would say, I slept for hours, but I still feel tired. I rested all day, but I still feel drained. And the reason was simple: their mind never stopped processing. Now listen carefully. When you lie down with unresolved thoughts, they don't disappear, they stay active in the background, quickly, continuously. And even though you're not aware of them, they're still there. Now imagine this. You go to sleep carrying everything from your day. Your mind keeps running, processing, repeating. And when you wake up, you're still carrying it. That's not rest, that's continuation. Now, here's something very important. This is why you can feel tired, even after doing nothing physically demanding, because the exhaustion is not physical, it's mental. Now listen carefully. Mental fatigue doesn't always feel like thinking. It feels like heaviness, low energy, lack of motivation, because your system is overloaded. Now imagine this. Every night you try to rest, but you never release what you carry. So every morning you wake up with the same load. That's the pattern. Now listen carefully. If you rest but never feel recovered, don't ignore it. That is a sign that something is continuing when it should be ending. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you how this begins to affect your direction, why you start losing motivation, and why even things you once cared about begin to feel distant and harder to pursue. Now, this is where the pattern stops being just a feeling and starts affecting your life in a deeper way. Because when that heaviness stays long enough, it doesn't just drain your energy, it begins to change your direction. I remember this clearly. This was the stage where people started losing something they couldn't easily describe. Not their ability, not their potential, but their drive. Now listen carefully. At first, you feel tired, then small things feel heavy, then rest stops working, and eventually, you stop moving the same way you used to. Things you once cared about start feeling distant. Goals that once felt clear start feeling unclear. Stocks that once felt natural start feeling like effort. Now, here's the truth you need to understand. This is not because you lost your desire, it's because your state changed. Because when your mind is overloaded, it doesn't just slow you down, it reduces your clarity. And when clarity drops, direction fades. I saw this again and again. People would say, I don't feel motivated anymore. I don't know what I want to do. I can't focus like I used to. But when you look deeper, it always traced back to the same thing: accumulation. Now listen carefully. Motivation is not something you force, it's something that comes from a clear state. And if your state is heavy, your motivation will always feel low. Now imagine this. Every day you're carrying mental weight. Every day your clarity is slightly reduced. Every day your energy is slightly lower. Over time, that builds into something bigger. You start delaying things, avoiding things, not because you don't care, but because everything feels harder to approach. That's the shift. Now, here's something very important. This is where most people misunderstand themselves. They think they've become lazy, unmotivated, undisciplined. But the truth is, they're overloaded. Now, listen carefully. When your system is overloaded, even simple actions feel like effort. And when everything feels like effort, you stop taking action consistently. That's how direction is lost. Not suddenly, but gradually. Now imagine this. Instead of moving forward with clarity, you start hesitating, delaying, overthinking, and that creates another pattern: inaction. Now listen carefully. If you feel like you've lost your direction, don't ignore it. That is a sign that your state has been affected over time. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you how to break this entire pattern. So you don't just understand why you feel heavy, but actually release it and regain your clarity completely. Now, this is where everything becomes real, because understanding the pattern is not enough. You have to interrupt it. And the truth is, you don't fix heaviness by adding more effort. You fix it by removing what shouldn't be there. I remember this clearly. People try to push through the weight, more motivation, more pressure, more force. But that never worked because you can't move freely while still carrying everything. Now listen carefully. The solution is simple, but it requires consistency. At the end of your day, before you go to sleep, you create a clear ending, not mentally rushing through it, not ignoring it, but intentionally closing it. That's the key. Now, here's what you do: you pause, just like that. You stop everything for a moment. You don't distract yourself. You don't reach for your phone. You don't jump into something else. You sit with the day you just had. Now listen carefully. You don't analyze it deeply. You don't overthink it. You acknowledge it. What happened, happened. What didn't get finished, didn't get finished. And that's okay. Now here's the important part. You release it. You make a clear decision. I'm not carrying this into tomorrow. That one decision creates a boundary, and your mind responds to boundaries. I saw this again and again. People who started doing this didn't feel instantly perfect, but they felt lighter, gradually, consistently. Now listen carefully. This is not about saying words, it's about meaning what you decide, because your mind follows clarity. Now imagine this. Every night, you end your day properly. You don't let thoughts continue endlessly. You don't let stress carry forward. You close it completely. Now here's something very important. You don't do this once. You do it every day because the heaviness you feel was built daily and it must be released daily. Now listen carefully. The first time you do this, it feels small. The second time, it feels familiar, but after consistent days, your mind begins to respond automatically. The moment you pause, the moment you decide to release, your system starts letting go. That's when the weight begins to lift, not suddenly, but steadily. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you what happens when this becomes your habit. When you no longer carry unnecessary weight and your energy starts returning naturally without forcing anything at all. Now, this is where everything changes in a way you can actually feel, not because you forced yourself, but because something that used to repeat stops. I remember this clearly. This was the stage where people stopped asking, why do I feel so heavy? Because the heaviness wasn't there the same way anymore. Now listen carefully. When you consistently release your day, your system stops accumulating unnecessary weight. And when there is no accumulation, there is nothing heavy to carry forward. That's the shift. Now here's what begins to happen. You wake up lighter, not overly energized, not suddenly perfect, but noticeably different. Your mind feels clearer. Your thoughts don't feel crowded. There is space again. I saw this again and again. People who used to wake up already tired started waking up neutral. And that neutrality is powerful because from neutral, you can move freely. Now listen carefully. Your energy starts returning, not because you added something new, but because you removed what didn't belong. That's the part most people miss. They try to gain energy without releasing what drains it. Now imagine this. Every night you close your day. Every night you release what you carried. Every night your system resets. So every morning you are not continuing from yesterday. You are starting fresh. Now here's something very important. This doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how you act. Because when your mind is lighter, your actions become easier. You don't hesitate as much. You don't overthink simple things. You move with more clarity. I saw this pattern clearly. People who felt stuck before started moving again, not because something pushed them, but because nothing was holding them back anymore. Now, listen carefully. This is what natural energy feels like, not forced, not artificial, but steady, available, reliable. Now, imagine this. You go through your day without that constant weight. You handle things without feeling overwhelmed. You think without pressure. That becomes your new normal. Now, here's the truth you need to understand. You were never lacking energy. You were carrying too much. And once that weight is removed, your natural state returns. Now listen carefully. This is not something complicated, it's something simple, done consistently. Because what you release daily stops returning daily. And once it stops returning, the pattern is broken. And what remains after that is clarity, lightness, and control over your state again.